Hello and welcome to this episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Munoz. This is part of my 29 Days of Magic series, where I get to interview amazing Black women 29 straight days during Black History Month. What could be more awesome? And today I'm super hyped to have Michelle Coley, who is a D&I professional, and she has such an amazing, winding, twisty road story. Can't wait for y'all to listen. So we'll jump right in. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Laura. How are you doing?
Oh, good. Causing trouble as always.
I love it.
Wonderful. And so, first question, and always the same, answers always amazing. I'm sure yours will be no different. So, Michelle, what was your first job?
My very first job was at the Brooklyn Public Library. I had that job when I was in high school, and it was all about shelving books. It was the most boring job ever, as you can probably imagine. But you know what? It paid minimum wage, and it gave me some pocket money and helped me to buy my sneakers and my makeup and all the fun stuff that I liked when I was in high school. So it worked just fine. But that's where I started in the world of library science, if you will.
All right, so we start in library sciences, and then we get to now. What's that career journey been like?
You know, it has been quite the circuitous route. I have been all over the place. I'm currently an HR professional now, which is something I never thought I would ever say. I never heard those words coming out of my mouth. But at my company, we have our D&I function in HR. So that's how I ended up being an HR practitioner in this role. But the journey to where I am now was, again, just a long and windy road. I started off in banking, and this was really because I really enjoyed kind of crunching numbers. I was always good at math. Like I went to a math and science high school, so I was always good with math, good with crunching numbers, felt very comfortable with that. And thought, banking probably would be a good fit for me. I actually worked for a bank when I was a senior in high school, and worked for that same bank for a couple of summers when I was in college. And then come senior year, when I was looking for a full-time job, that bank was on campus recruiting. And I was like, well, hey, I've already worked for you guys. You need to hire me again. So I ended up working for that bank and had a great opportunity to really learn about different areas in the bank. I was in a career development program, and so I was rotating through different areas of the bank. And then once the program was over, it was up to me to determine what areas I was most interested in. And I was able to then interview for a role there and get the role. So I ended up in our commercial lending area. And this was a group that really focused on kind of your apparel and fashion companies that were coming to the bank to look for funding, to start special projects. I'm just looking to support their overall capital needs. So I was a financial analyst and basically crunched numbers all day and put together reports that really assess the risk of a certain company and the risk for the bank to lend money to that company. And that's what I did for about 3 years. But I knew it wasn't something I wanted to do for the rest of my career. I had majored in marketing when I was in college. And so while I was very comfortable with crunching numbers, I also had kind of a creative side to me and thought that was something that, I definitely was missing out on, just working for a bank and crunching numbers there. So I had to figure out, okay, how was I going to move from being a banker to at school? And so I decided to go back, get my MBA, and thought I knew exactly what I wanted to do once I started. I was like, I'm going to go in, I'm going to, get a marketing job, I'm going to come out and have this long marketing career. And that was the plan. And it went a little awry, and really because I think I got a little greedy.
Oh, do tell.
Yeah, I got a little greedy. While I was in school, all the consulting firms, your Deloitte and your Accentures and EYs, they all came to campus and they, dangled that carrot that, oh my gosh, come and work for us. You're going to make all this money and you're going to be able to travel on the company's dime and get all this great experience and be able to really diversify your background. And I'll be honest, I think the money was the thing that drew me to the profession more than anything else. It was. I mean, consulting firms were paying a ridiculous amount of money. Like I was basically going to triple my salary, compared to what I was getting paid when I first started school. And so I was like, let me try this consulting thing. Well, I decided to do that. and hated it. And I really should have stuck with marketing because I've actually had the great opportunity to intern with Procter and Gamble during the summer between my first and second year. And I liked it. I was kind of on the fence about Cincinnati, so I think that kind of played into it too. But again, the consulting firms came with the big dollars and the big promises. And one of the promises was that I could pick whatever city in the country I wanted to go and work in, and I'd get the same salary. So I grew up in New York, and so I had the opportunity to go and work for this consulting firm. I was working for E&Y. I could go and work for them in New York, or I could work for them in Atlanta. And the reason I focused on Atlanta was one of my best friends in high school had actually moved to Atlanta, where I'm still here today. And after I visited for a while, and I went to school at Duke, so I was used to being kind of in the South for a bit and the warmer weather and the lower cost of living. So decided to take my salary that would, have me live a decent life in New York, but would have me live an amazing and phenomenal life in Atlanta. And I relocated to Atlanta after graduating from business school. And so that's, again, I started working for E&Y, hated it, just like, this is not going to work. And the time that I graduated was around the time when it was all about the dot-coms. And I knew I wasn't, adventurous enough to go and work for a true startup. But I actually found an amazing opportunity with a company that worked with a lot of startups. So this company is called Travelport. And at the time, it was owned by airlines, very stable company, still around to this day. And Travelport was a real kind of innovator in terms of the online e-commerce, in terms of travel. And so they worked with the Expedias of the world and the Orbits of the world and Hotwire, all of those online travel companies. And so I was like, this sounds interesting. It can give me kind of a dot-com-ish like experience with a more stable company. So I went to work for Travelport for a few years, and things were plugging along, things were going well until, the unfortunate events of 9/11. So of course, being at a company that was, totally focused on travel, that's all we did. And it was travel technology. It was kind of the background that's behind all of the online travel sites, all of the travel agency portals, like whether it's a brick and mortar travel agency or an online travel agency. And so, of course, 9/11, it was a huge impact to the business. And got through, 2001 fine, 2002, there were layoffs, or we started doing, a system where, okay, you can work, for 9 days, and then on the 10th day you can stay home, but you're also not going to get paid for that 10th day. And so every 2 weeks, you had like 1 day off, taken out of your paycheck. But it kept the company afloat for a while and kept, us through it. But I was working in the marketing group at that time and kind of said, we're still struggling, the company's still struggling, and it's going to be a while before we get to a good place. So I need to start looking for something else before I'm forced to look for something else. So started looking for other opportunities and was planning to stay in Atlanta. Had no plans to relocate, but an amazing opportunity came across my table and I had to jump on it. And it was to go down to Orlando, Florida to work for Walt Disney World. So I was like, okay, I didn't really want to move, but I do need to find another job before I'm forced to find another job. And this is an amazing company. I'll have an amazing experience. So let's do this. So I packed myself up, moved down to Florida. And it was a really good move because within 6 months of me moving, the entire department that I had been in was decimated. So I know I would have lost my job.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so was fortunate to get this opportunity at Walt Disney World. And when I first got there, I was working on their resorts hotel brands. So basically saying, whenever you come down to Walt Disney World, we don't want you staying at a Marriott. We don't want you staying at the local Holiday Inn. Come and stay on property with Disney. And that was definitely a marketing challenge because Disney is expensive, and so even the most basic room is going to be minimum $150 a night. But all the marketing that went around it, the whole idea you're staying in the middle of the magic and it's amazing and Mickey's here and blah blah blah, that was a big part of what I was doing my first year or so at Disney. And then I started working on their Florida residence and pass holder brands. And that was really just, getting Florida residents all to get annual passes and, get other people to get annual passes and doing all the marketing work behind that. So had a great experience at Disney, learned a lot, did a lot of awesome things, but did not like Orlando at all. I think I was driving up to Atlanta like every every couple of weeks. I was hopping in my car and doing that
Doing the
6-hour
drive.
drive. Yeah, I was like, this is not working for me. And so, did that for a while and knew I wanted to move back to Atlanta. And so then I was fortunate to find a great opportunity back in Atlanta with Coca-Cola, a company that I know you work a lot with too. And, I had a great experience there, worked for Coke for, a number of years. And Coke is a great place. People always think like go inside the building, it's like, happiness and butterflies and unicorns, but it's a place that will wear you out. It will definitely wear you out. It's definitely, the type of place where you're working crazy hours all the time. And it was something that I thought I needed to do because that's what you do, right? You get a job and you just work to climb that corporate ladder. But, got to a point where I was kind of like, really isn't for me. Yeah, obviously I want to make a good living and I want to have success in my life, but at the same time, I don't want to be, stressed out all the time and working
Balance,
every
actual
weekend.
balance.
Actual balance, right? And it just the road that I was on, I was not going to get that kind of balance. And so I started to have kind of like I can't call it a midlife crisis because I was too young at the time, but
A life crisis.
right, exactly. Just started thinking about like, what do I really want to do? And if I'm working for a company, like, is it important for me to love the brand and love the products and, what type of balance do I need and what's really important there? And so I kind of figured out that long term, I didn't think Coke was going to be for me. I'm certainly not one to say I don't drink Coca-Cola products. I do occasionally, but it wasn't like, I had this deep love for the brand that transcended all of this, everything else that I was dealing with while I was there. So I knew I would need to do something a little different. So that's when I kind of took a step back and figured out, okay, well, Michelle, what's your next step? And I didn't know. I didn't know what that next step was. But then figured that, what, I think maybe the year before I left Coke, I figured that I might need to take some time off to kind of figure things out. And so started really like saving and putting together my, get out of here funds, as I call it, and making
I love
sure
get out of
that
here funds.
I had to have it because I was like, I never want to be in a position where I hate my job and I can't leave. And so spent a year kind of building up that fund and then decided to leave. Didn't have a job. I was like, this is just not working for me anymore. And I don't recommend that for everyone. Obviously, for me, it worked because I was in a place where financially I knew I would be okay. And I remember that year I read the book, Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Work Week. And
Oh, yeah.
yeah, right. And that book was so popular. But I tell you, the thing that really resonated with me more than anything else was that he was saying, don't be afraid to take a break, to walk away. Now, his point was, okay, if you take a break, don't sit around watching soap operas all day, right? You can do some of that. But if you're doing something productive with yourself, you're going to be able to find another job. And I was nervous about it, but I was like, you know what, Michelle, let's do this because staying where you are right now it's not going to be good for you. It hasn't been good for you, and you need a change. So I left Coke. The goal, I was like middle of the year, probably like end of May, I remember was my last day, and decided to go travel. Like 2 weeks after I quit, my friends and I did a Mediterranean cruise, a 10-night
Yes.
Mediterranean cruise. Oh yeah, we were living it up. I came back. I went to Tulum, Mexico for a couple of weeks. I came back. I went to London. I was a lady of leisure. I was loving it. And, again, I don't recommend doing this for everyone, but if you can take time
Do
off
it.
from corporate America, oh, it was just the most amazing experience, Laura, the most amazing experience. So my goal was to say, let me take 6 months off, do what I want to do, and then come the beginning of the next year, I'll start looking for a job. and really enjoyed my time off. Did a couple of little consulting gigs, did a lot of work with not-for-profits. And so I kept myself busy doing things that still were, enriching and giving me, excitement and giving me something to do. So it was a great 6 months off. I think it was around December of that year. I was just like, oh, let me just look out and see what's on Indeed and let me kind of, see what's out there. And I had figured out that I wanted to go into the world of travel because I was always passionate about travel. It's something that I love doing. I travel extensively, both domestically and internationally. So I'm like, if I can find a job with a company that is in the travel space, again, and before when I was with Travelport, I was in the space, but it was more about the technology behind it. I really wanted to find a job where I was really knee deep in all things, getting people motivated and excited to travel with a certain company. So was fortunate enough to find an opportunity with Royal Caribbean. And, it's interesting because I ended up working on their Celebrity Cruises brand, which is kind of like their mid-tier brand. So you have, Royal Caribbean Cruises, and you've got Celebrities, the mid-tier, and then Azamara is their premium brand. And coincidentally, that 10-night Mediterranean cruise that I did the previous year was with Celebrity. So I'm like, this is, serendipity, right? I was meant to be here. And love that job, worked for them in their Atlanta office, and my job really was to increase awareness of the brand among key target audiences, really reaching a more affluent consumer, people who were into food and wine, because that's what Celebrity is known for, just amazing gastronomy and having like the best chefs and sommeliers and all of this stuff on board, and had an amazing time in that role. I mean, you from an events standpoint, I was basically going to like all the top food and wine events, all the top galas that the not-for-profits would put on.
You're making me very jealous.
It was so much fun. It was so much fun. And I had, an event planning company that did all the labor, but obviously I had to, help
be there to oversee
come up. I had to be there, had to see it in action, had to work with the partners who, we were sponsoring. And it was so much fun. I enjoyed it. I had a great time. Did that for a few years. And then, of course, as luck would have it, a new CEO came on board. And this job that I had was part of an initiative that the old CEO had put together. And so when I heard a new CEO was coming, I was like, uh-oh, this is trouble, right? Because no CEO wants to come in and, really just ride the coattails of the previous CEO. Like, she came in and she wanted to do something new. And I just knew the writing was on the wall. I was like, I bet you she starts shutting this down because this was her predecessor's baby, not hers. And that's what happened. Eventually, they closed. We had about 10 different markets around the country. They ended up closing about 7 of them and consolidating them into kind of an East, a Mid, and West Coast region. And so they say, hey, Michelle, we love you. You do amazing work. We don't want to lose you. Can you come down to Miami? And I was like, nope. I was like, I already did Florida. I'm not going back. And, they tried to work with me, and I was just like, no, I had just bought a new house and all my friends were here. And I'd, again, already done the Florida thing, even though Miami's a little different than Orlando, but still, I still didn't have a deep love for Miami either. And just really was not interested in relocating at the time. So I was like, okay, what do I do with myself now? So coincidentally, the marketing agency that I had hired to do our local PR, they had some new opportunities come up, and they were like, well, why don't you come and work for us? And at first, I had to really think about it because I've always been on the client side. I've never been on the agency side. And I knew that was going to be an adjustment for me, but decided to, just bite the bullet and get that experience because I thought if nothing else, it will help me really know how to pitch my services should I decide to become an entrepreneur in the future. Because that's, what you're doing. You're talking about all the great things the agency can do and getting in clients and servicing those clients. I thought it would be a good experience for me to have on the other side. So did that for a few years and, knew kind of like, okay, I still had that travel bug, still wanting to kind of get back into the travel world. And so ended up, finding a great opportunity with a local airline. Got back into the travel world, was still doing marketing for them within their division that focused on kind of corporate travelers. And so was, pushing our services and different promotions and different loyalty promotions to corporate travelers, was doing that for a while, was doing that up until early 2021. And so got through COVID, all the airlines were hurting with COVID, of course. And then, unfortunately, with all the events that happened in 2020 from a racial injustice standpoint, particularly the murder of George Floyd, every company really started doing more from a DE&I perspective. So prior to 2020, I think we had maybe 5 people in our DE&I group, and it expanded to we're up to like 20 people now. And I saw that opportunity, and I'd always been doing DE&I work kind of as a side hustle, doing it as a special project or working with a committee on DE&I or, looking for diverse candidates from a recruiting standpoint. Always did that kind of work, but never did it as my full-time job. So saw this as a great opportunity for me to do something like that and moved into my DE&I role in early 2021. And I've been doing that ever since. So it was a long journey. It took a lot of twists and turns and, me trying to figure out what I wanted to do when I grew up. And now I'm here as a DE&I practitioner and loving it.
I love this story. And I love how you just show that you can kind of bounce from place to place. You can go corporate, you can go agency, you can go back to corporate, but you can also take that time off. And I think that's so beautiful that you took that time off and you had Michelle time.
Yes.
Because I think similarly, like sometimes folks think they can't do it or they have to be at a certain level. And again, not everyone can do it, but if there is a moment where you can, take the time and whatever that time looks like.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because you can just start working and working and working and working, and the years just fly by. You look up and you're like, am I really doing what I want to do here? You never really get that time to sit and think. And even if you take a week off for vacation, typically like you're going somewhere, you're busy, you're preoccupied with other things going on, and you still just don't have that time to think. So over the course of 6 months, I had plenty of time to think and figure out what I wanted to do and figure out what was going to work for me and what wasn't, and figure out the type of culture that I wanted to be a part of. Like, I didn't want to go into a role in a company where I was working 70 hours a week and, was fearful of losing my job every turn and was in a very kind of cutthroat environment. I knew that wasn't for me. And I also knew, quite honestly, that, fighting and scrapping to climb that corporate ladder, I was like, I did all of that and it wore on me, and it just wasn't something that was important to Michelle. Now, obviously, I still have a mortgage to pay and I still want to do what I need to do, right? So I still want to make sure that I am being, paid my worth. But I came to realize almost full circle when I think about my first job out of business school was all about the money, to get into where I am now, where I'm like, it's really more about getting that satisfaction. And yes, the money is important because, again, bills have to be paid, but that isn't the primary driver for, me doing what I'm doing now.
You need your peace, and it's interesting. So, I'm changing the order of my questions, but I think this is a good segue into this other question, where it's like, Michelle, what do you do for your self-care?
I am a big kind of, I don't even know what to call it. Like, I love lotions and potions and bath salts and, massages and all of those things. Like, I definitely try to get a massage pretty regularly. At one point I was up to once a month, but I've since scaled back, but still try to get in there and, get some professional hands on me to work out all the kinks and the knots. So that's a big thing that I do. But in between then, I am the person that will sit in the bath. I'm the person that has even like the scents in the shower. Like, you won't see me going into a shower like a bar of dial, right? I need something that has some strong scents in it, some lavender and vanilla, and, taking care of myself and refreshing myself personally. So that's a big part of my self-care. I'm also a gym rat. I love going in the gym. I'm one of those crazy people. Like back in the day, I was doing CrossFit. I've done Orange Theory. I've done mud runs and, rugged maniac obstacle courses and all that kind of stuff. So I do like, staying active. To this day, my niece and I, she's my adult niece, we walk every Sunday. So we usually do a 5 to 6 mile walk every Sunday. And it's just, keeping my body moving is a great way for me to just reduce stress and just feel good. So I think I need the massages after I do
Same
all the
girl.
working out.
No, I'm the massage girl with you. I'm right there with you in the massage. I love a good 90-minute massage. I actually read an interesting article by Lovey Jones last year, and she was like, take a 90-minute massage. 60 is great, but you need to take a
Yeah.
90-minute. Like the 90-minute is what you actually need. And now it's become my thing where like, I make sure that I try and get at least every 6 to 8 weeks that 90-minute massage because it just helps so much.
It helps so much. It helps so much. I'm still trying to figure out like how I can find a good masseuse to come to my house because I love getting massages, and I typically, like when I go on vacation, I always get a massage. But like even when I'm home, you go to massage, you got to get in your car, you got to drive there, you get all relaxed, and you got to get in your car and drive home. And so I need to like get to a point where I can just roll off the massage table and like walk upstairs and sit down.
I mean, there are some services, but not to the level that there should be because folks need this. It's important.
Yeah.
Thinking about all the amazing stuff that you've been able to do, what do you think you'd tell 18-year-old Michelle?
I would tell 18-year-old Michelle not to be concerned if you don't know what you want to do. And not to be, envious of people who seem to have a career in mind or just moving along those careers. Because it's not that important. As you see, I kind of went all over the place and I did some zigging and some zagging, and I'm fine and life is good. And it was something that I probably stressed out about more than I needed to. And stressed about how I was going to be perceived and the prestige of a certain job or a company or a title. And, there are great things with that. No, I'm not knocking that. But then I realize now that that's not what's most important to me. And it was okay if I didn't know, kind of what I needed at 18. I could figure it out along the way.
That's the most important thing. You just can figure it out along the way. It is not a box you absolutely have to check. So,
Right.
Last question for you. Do you have a give and or ask of the audience?
A give and an ask of the audience. I would say, what would be my give? My give would be one of my favorite quotes, and I don't know who said it, but my give would be to remember that comparison is the thief of joy. And I'll say that because, even in my journey, a lot of what I did was based on how, other people were doing or how I would compare to other people, and it just robs your joy. And so that's something that I, would put out there as a gift. Just remember that comparison is a thief of joy.
That's love it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Shout from the rooftops because people sometimes do not understand that's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then my ask would be, and is it an ask for me or just an
Anything.
ask of people in general? I think my ask would be that you always give yourself grace and give other people grace too. Like I've been on both sides of that fence where, I haven't given grace to someone who probably needed it. And I've been on the other side where I needed to get some grace and didn't get it. So I will ask that people always remember, give people grace and remember that you want people to give grace to you too.
You really do. And it's so important. Oh my gosh, Michelle, you're amazing.
Thank you.
Next time in Atlanta, we have to come meet.
Yes.
And because oh my God, girl, this has been such a delightful and insightful conversation in how you have moved and built out your career. And I know it's going to resonate with our audience. So thank you so much for sharing your story and being part of 29 Days of Magic.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on.
Awesome. Thank you. And that is our show.